a Chinese intellectual, 19th century, late 19th century, translate. His name is Yan Fu, and he is the first one to bring English into China. To bring the Western European work or knowledge bring to China. He set up the principle for translations, 3 words. Xin is trust, Da is kind of reach to the meanings, and the Ya is elegant. So you really translation, you have to trust, you have a meaning, to write there, and then you have to be elegant. So how do you do with 2 languages to become one? It's very difficult. So this is a long journey. I start doing a little bit of translation, then I quit. I don't want to do translation at all. So I think it's too hard. The bar is too high. So I stay on what I am. So I do have a PowerPoint. Will you? Okay. So when you put on the PowerPoint, I want to see why YinYang. Like, what happened? How I pick up this topic? I just want to see. I actually trained like manual taker. I born and trained in China. Then I came to US for study, get a PhD, or get a graduate work, and then work. So once I landed at Venice Beach in California, and the people joking that's a source of evil because it's a very creative, all kind of ideas floating in there, and then most interesting concept in there you can see is yin-yang symbol. Right? Most people think about the yin-yang, they think about this kind of, the symbols, black and white, this whole thing. That's all about yin-yang. Well, first time I saw this, I said, wow. You see the yin-yang in surfboards, in earrings, in candles. I said, what do you do to our yin-yang? So for me, I never thought yin-yang is just a symbol. There is something so deep rooted in the culture. I call the yin-yang right now the yin-yang intelligence. So it's a form of intelligence. It's a form of thinking. It's kind of a strategy, and it's everything. Even in Chinese language, I give you, it's really Chinese DNA, if it's a culture DNA of Chinese culture. Because if you think about, like see the sunny day, they call the yang day, and then a cloudy day, they call the yin day. Okay, so that's mainly, it's part of Chinese language. And then if you see many things like science, positive, negative, yang, yin and yang. And then human body, you have yin and yang. Especially there is one is like male's reproductive organs, they call the yang-ji. It's like a yang, instrument of yang. And then for women's reproductive organs, they call the house of yin. So it's such important terms, but yet the way we understand, we tend to trivialize it, and so that's how I pick up this kind of yin-yang idea to say, no, I wanted to give a comprehensive account of yin-yang. So this is how this book is about, and it takes a long time from the first idea and to the quotation. That is also takes 7 years. So now today, if we think about it, we 17 years reach the Spanish language. So, there is so much we can talk about yin-yang, but then sometimes I also kind of said, oh, I got enough yin-yang, let's move on. So basically, right now, today, I will talk about a little bit of yin-yang, but I actually want to talk about is what is thinking take place, beyond yin-yang. Or actually, I will say push yin-yang idea, this intelligence to another level, to being a little deeper, and to look at the more way to thinking about this yin-yang intelligence. So this is what I'm going to do. So the first question is why yin-yang, right? So this is why I think yin-yang offered the alternative process. Alternative process is also alternative way of thinking. It's to think about how can we move from struggle with the problem to flow with the problem. So because yin-yang, one first very important way to thinking about the yin-yang, it's not, if you look at yin-yang symbol, oh, black and white, right and wrong. No, this is not oppositional, right? Yin and yang is not oppositional, but rather they are mutually contained, mutually, we will see independence. So if you think about in English book, in the page 12, I'm formulating 6 ways to think about yin-yang, because ultimately yin-yang is relationships. But then how that relationship is too, we will see too general. What is nuances of a relationship? So I gave a 6th way to think about these relationships. So I don't know in the Spanish translation. I think if you got that part, that's it. You know, it's a modern conflict, a oppositional friction, but how yin-yang to do it, mutually contained, mutually dependence, resonance, mutually transformation. So this is all this. So question is, so therefore, when we see the two opposition, we think about the problems, and we are not trying to power over or powers controlling over, but rather power with. So there is where yin-yang is perhaps the way to thinking about the global problems, personal problems in different way. If we provide a different alternative way to think about. So that's why also I think about yin-yang. We can think about yin-yang as a strategy. Okay, yin-yang strategy. What I mean yin-yang strategy is to pay attention to yin elements, to pay attention to those unseen, hidden patterns, and also we can think about is called the silence transformation. So this is another way we think about is perhaps I will think about yin-yang has its own distinctive way to thinking about, you know, a wide range of problems, from metaphysical, ontological, phenomenological, ethical, and a personal way of, it's a way of living. It's a lifestyle. So this one, that's how I think about in order to, if you really want to get into a China. So that's the big pictures, but also another practical issue is if you want to understand Chinese culture, learn about a society, and then we probably should think about how we think about the Chinese mind and think about yin-yang is a guidance way. So now I wanted to look at something beyond just this using yin-yang. Okay, so there's 2 layers, right? First layer, what is yin-yang thinking? Why yin-yang is yin-yang intelligence, right? This is what I have done, you know, before. Now I move on to another level. How do we apply yin-yang to a concrete, philosophical, or we were thinking about a practical problems? So this is, I like to first presenting you a problem. The problem, this is what Zhuangzi is. Zhuangzi, for most, if you do a sinology, you know, one of Taoist classics. Right? So he talking about human beings inevitable to have we actually entrapped our heart and mind. For Chinese mind is the same, called Xin, is heart and mind is together. So it's not separate as the Greeks do. So earlier we talked about the knowledge, Claudia talked about the production of knowledge, but here was Zhuangzi thinking about knowledge is any kind of knowledge is not final, right? So it's not definitive, static, or removed from flow. Another word, anything you think you know entails not knowing. Not knowing informed your knowing. When you know something, then what that means you know your knowledge is limited. You're always open to something unknown. Another word, knowing brings to unknowing. So this is kind of philosophical questions. But this is, I want to think about this. Zhuangzi in the chapter 33, the last chapter, he talked about a story. This man is very interesting. The man and hate his own shadows. Okay? First thing today, I landed at Santiago. I saw the sun so bright. I said, oh, this is just like I growing up in China, in Xi'an's sun. You cannot see this bright sun in anywhere, maybe in Chile. I don't know, we can talk about in Santiago, but the sun creates shadow, right? The guy hates shadow. Yeah. What did he do? He ran away of shadow. He run, but he still cannot get away from it, and he run until last breath. He died out of blood, running. So this is what I want to think about. Lots of times, our mind is so clouded. Our mind is in trouble because we are just thinking our own echoes. We only listen to our echoes, and to thinking about, that cannot be get caught, attached to certain things. This is chapter 1, Zhuangzi talk about your mind just like a field, like a garden. Okay, so the garden, there is healthy plants grow, but also there is weed. So we have to pay attention. Even you have great, excellent intentions, motivations, insights, but guess what? Your mind still somewhat being clouded by weed. What do you have to do? Constantly cleaning up. So this is what the Zhuangzi talk about. So the Zhuangzi we talk about is we have to think about illumination of objects. This is in Chinese word called Ming. Okay, so we want to cutting out the tunnel vision of life. We always step in our own way of life. We think it is the only way, but then perhaps Zhuangzi suggests us it might be another way. There is otherwise. So this is what Zhuangzi is saying, right? So we're going to thinking about how do we reach that Ming, so that with illumination. This is one interesting question I want to see. Okay, Zhuangzi help us to think about, we want to get illumination. We all actually in the Greeks, we also think about there is illumination problem, right? If we think about Plato's a cave, right? So the story, Plato's The Republic story, we all lived our own caves. We take a shadow as real life. So what do you have to do? You have to walk out, see the sun. The sun is knowledge. The sun is to help you to be enlightened. Knowledge is way to getting the enlightened, to illuminate. But there is a very interesting phenomenon in Chinese culture, because this Ming has two characters. One is the sun, but also the moon. So now I brought up this moon, right? So we think about in Greeks. I think in the indigenous culture in Latin America pay a lot of attention to the moon, right? Greeks don't. They think, moon is just reflect. Moon's reflection of the sun. This sun is the only thing. But there is something interesting about this phenomenon, moon and the sun. Think about the sun. Yes, sunrise, sundown. That's it. The daily changes, right? But the moon have the monthly changes. It's phases. It's change, right? So have a different different phase, you know, and in the quarter moon, half moon, and the full moon. So what it is, there is a mediated insight. So because this moon, there is a certain kind of mystery. But also, I would think moonlight also reveals in softness, ambiguity, and the shade. We do need the moon see in the dark, but yet you can see this brightness very different like a daylight. So the moon, wonderful way to think about the illumination in Chinese, this kind of Wang's at least, the man said, we have to think about how the moon gave us indications, how the moon to help us to know this world. So this is our in the YinYang, in the one of the book talk about in Chinese calendar. In the book we also talk about there's two kind calendar. There is a Yang calendar, which is a standard universal globally used, which we're familiar with. But the Chinese also have Yin, not just a solar calendar, lunar calendar. Lunar calendar is based on the moon, right? Lunar calendar, Chinese New Year is based on the moon. So that is entails more movement, you know, faces and unseen. And in Chinese literature, there's many literaries, okay, talk about a lot about the moon, what the moon gives us. When we think about the moon, if we think about the moon, because the moon is not that, it's type of clarity, right? But this clarity is based on certainty. This is I will based on this kind of Dao De Jing's talk about. It's not. It's you know and not knowing, right? So this is we're going to do the Dao De Jing's reading. You can see Dao De Jing use a lot of concept, vague, diffuse, the dull, confused. You know, all these kind of terms that I will think about. I come up and say, oh, maybe we call it lunar mind. You know, lunar mind is a vague, infinite meanings and uncertain. Do we have lunar mind? Should we have lunar mind? What does lunar mind to do to us? So this is that I need to provide some sort of justifications for it. So one thing is I think that's based on Dao De Jing, right? Dao De Jing chapter 8 talk about the highest good should be like water. In that, he also listed 5 good things you add. Now, one of them is you're good at in this kind of yuan, is kind of water. And the water is kind of really interesting. It's constantly flowing, okay? So it's a type of mystery. Another one, your mind, your heart mind should resign or accepting, or can in some word embrace this kind of mystery. One of the nice way to talk about not too scary is wonder. It could be wonder. So this is one of the things. So what do we think about this lunar light? So now I'm using, that's the work right now I'm doing it, called flowing proximity. Okay. I called this, why I'm doing this, because I think that proximity is a manifestation of yin-yang thinking. Okay. Now, we can think about the proximity. It's not the physical distance. Okay. It's not like a physical, how I close to you, how I far from you. But we think about a proximity, it's a space. It's a relational field. So, because this space allows you to have ambiguity, non-knowing, and potential. Just like a moonlight. So it illuminates softly and without catches the shadows that divide. So this clarity, we think about somewhat is attunement. you know, the attunement is people working the heidegger is so much being used. So I'm hard to see it's attunement, it's resonating, no, something we can see, but it's a dispute. Okay, so question we want to think about what is proximity. I'm not sure Spanish has some word. When the Latin is nearness, close, right? Nearest to love your neighbors, right? That's close, that's near. So we always think about proximity is the way living. It's a phenomenological we will say human conditions. We live it's all proximity is somewhat right part of our life. But for Chinese also have a proximity. For example, if you're doing Chinese Confucianism, of course you always need close to filial piety to your parents, to filial piety to your country. And it's near the close. So what this proximity enable me to do the theoretical work? How this going to do? I think I'm coming up with 4 dimensions to think about this proximity, extended meaning. One is the softness, it's a role. This we will see. It's a shared space between our existence. So it's like a bamboo. Right? I have some specific work on the road. You know, your bamboo, you blow in the wind, but you never broke. You know, can bend it, but you not broke. Right? That is suppleness. Another one is we see tone is maybe best way we think about it is it's resonating, okay, and passing through without without the stuckness, okay. And the yin, of course, I talking about a lot, and that shi is emergent configuration. So this is also in this is a thinker. Basically, I want to thinker is YinYang thinking idea. So propositional, I want to say proximity is not spatial, but it's a relational field, okay? And it's not a static, proximity is not a static distance between 2 points, but a living field, you know, with closeness and distance constantly shifting. So it's dynamics, so I'm talking about. These things is so important. Also, I want to think about, because right now, technology, especially digital world, digital technology, to bring us appear to be very close, right? So think about my example. Before, if you love some singer, right? You love some music, you have to buy tickets, go into concert, and then it's done. But now you have all this equipment. You can listen 24/7. And also you swipe, use the phone, you swipe, you know what's happening in everywhere in the world, right? This social media seems to bring the world close to us. It's true? Or actually, you know, we actually bring us more apart. Another word, I think there's a scholar, a Korean German, he talked about how we have communication, but without the community. That's the one issue we can see. Second issue, we will see how we become a slave of our phone. What would it be like if we without the phone? Right? We ask our student, you don't have a phone, what do you do? I co-taught a class with an English professor. We do is everyone walk into class, we have two buckets. One bucket is empty. Put your phone, surrounding your phone in this pocket. Another bucket is a piece of rock. Everybody picking up a piece of rock, symbol of nature. All right? People are agitated. How could you take my phone away? Yeah, just for 75 minutes. You can have it later. But now put a rock, they feel, oh, this is so silly. But then gradually they feel that they do need a distance from this equipment with their phone, with their social media. They hate it, but they still want it. It is a very dynamic situation, right? They still want to close it because they're afraid they're going to miss out. But they also hate it because it is wasting so much time from it. In other words, we do proximate to some technology, but the proximity also entails to break through distance from it. So that distance is something I wanted to talk about. So one of the things we talk about a proximity is the raw softness, okay, flexibility. This is when we can come to the Tao. You know, in the book, Lu Shi Chun Qiu is a Chinese classical text, and they use one word to describe way of thinking. They say, early Chinese, we was in country, the school competing during that period of time, use one word to describe each schools. So this is, we talk about this text, Han, right, 200 AD, describe, looking in the back of the history, and they said, okay, Confucius is Ren, benevolence. Mozi is Li, benefit. Okay, logicians is Ming, it's a name, logic. Now, for the Tao, what is the Tao? Rou. That is the word. So the Rou is hard to, you can do softness, supple, and but this is what the Tao have. The Rou, this character itself is the wood on the bottom and the spirit on the top. In other words, if you want to make a really strong, spirit, that is a metal on the head, but you have to have a wood and the softness. So in other words, we think about the softness is a part of life. But in softness also, we can think about the yin elements of all existence. But we usually dismiss it. We think about the softness is a weakness. But it's not, because there is certain things we do need, right? Yielding and adjusting, making space, okay? There is a space. So that we're talking about even if you have this conflict, what do you do, right? So if opposition, one of the things is to change positions, to reframe the problems. So this is many things we can see this manifested this real concept. Also the words we use, the empathy, returning, low, yielding. So but it's really a important condition, okay? All existence condition we dismiss. For example, okay, so I'm not sure, so if we see, what is earthquake-proof buildings? The building will be sustained from earthquake. One important thing from the science informed is your root, your bottom, your base, your foundation moves. When earth moves, the foundation moves. Move with it, then you can stand strong. No matter how human beings to building this so tough metal buildings, when earth shakes, you fall down because you use this kind of strength. There's different type of strength, right? So this is the one. So this is the one. There's a lot to talk about the road. So I want to talk about. So another concept we think of the proximity is a tone. It's a flowing. Okay, tone is a very interesting concept in Chinese.